Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Big Boys right here on the Pregame Show Network. I am Tali Carr and joined by my compadres as we do it every week. It's our guy, Uncle Neely from Boulder, Colorado. And of course, we got Coach Carl. He's joining us from St. Louis. He's a college football analyst, 24/7 Sports. Carl, we're going to start with you here, brother. Finished out the season, road trip to Utah. Playing without Shador Sanders, another close one. Another, I think, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but it did not turn out in the favor of Colorado. Me and Neely talked about this earlier in the week. Carl, I really think that was like the epitome of the season.
Well, playing at Utah is going to be tough by any metric at any time, but going up there and playing without Shador, who's been the most consistent player and your leader all year, that mentally could have you kind of out of sorts as a team. But they did. I thought they fought. I thought they had some opportunities, a couple missed calls, a couple things that got away. But now the season is behind you. You have to turn the page now to recruiting, transfer portal, high school national signing day. You have to start building that team for next year, filling those holes, and put the past behind you.
Yeah, man, that's where we are. You know, the season is over, but if you look at that Utah game, it was another example throughout this season of just a clear evidence of what you're lacking and what you need. Utah was able, they're a running team. It doesn't matter if they were using one of their backup quarterbacks as well. Their philosophy is to run the ball. And once again, the defense gave us some big runs, that kind of took some momentum away. I will say shout out to Charles Kelly's defense for this, because one of the things that kept that game close is there was about 3 occasions that they were in the red zone and going for a touchdown, and we were able to hold them, to field goals. So the defense, is solid in some aspects, just still giving up too many big plays. And Carl Reed, coach, you're exactly right. When you don't have Shador Sanders, the other team has a greater chance than they had if you had him with you. One thing I do want to point out that Travis Hunter was also a game-time decision, but he walked in the coach's office well after the team was warmed up and dressed. And I knew he was going to play because the meeting only lasted about 5 seconds. When an answer is a no, you kind of go back and forth. When the answer is yes, it's like, go ahead and get dressed. So Travis was able to demonstrate once again what I believe in my mind, that he is the number one player in college football with the talent level that he possesses on both sides of the ball. But in absence of a Shador Sanders, but you got a Travis Hunter going against their backup quarterback, you had a damn good chance to win that game.
Carl, how would you rate the talent that Colorado had to face this year? Now that the season is over, we look back on the record. I mean, this was the last year of the Pac-12, but man, I don't know. At the beginning of the season, people thought the Pac-12 would be as good as it was in the swan song season. How would you rate the teams that they faced, on average throughout the season?
Well, the Pac-12 has been the best college football conference in the country this year. When you think about the talent level, you look at Washington and Oregon, both teams that their playoff berth is going to come down to their matchup in the Pac-12 championship on Saturday. But top to bottom, the Pac-12 this year has outplayed the SEC and the Big Ten. It's been the best conference in college football. You got elite quarterback play at the majority of the schools, big-time quarterbacks. There was a report today of Cam Ward already being offered upwards of over $1 million from 5 to 6 different schools to enter the transfer portal. So that's something that's going to be talked about over the next 48 to 72 hours. Great quarterback play, great teams. It's a shame what happened to the Pac-12, but Colorado played a really, really tough schedule this year against a bunch of guys that you'll see in the NFL in the future.
I agree with that, Coach Reed. I think that what gets overlooked because of the attention and gravitas of Coach Prime Deion Sanders and the expectations that happen when he walks in the room, people lose track of just the level of stiff competition these guys had to face in year one under Coach Prime. The Pac-12, RIP to the Pac-12, it just is unfortunate to have that level of talent at quarterback and across the board on defense as well. And the conference couldn't survive as people go to these super and mega conferences and chase that money just like NILs for the kids. But that being said, man, this was a tough conference to play in. And look at how many games that you were competitive. If you take out that Oregon and that Washington State, those were 2 just glaring losses. But the rest of the Pac-12 games, you were in the mix, either leading or could have won the game. So I think it says a lot about the future of this program. Even though this program is moving to the Big 12, being able to compete at the level that they were in the Pac-12 shows that, man, if you plug in these holes and get some guys in, that can help you with some alignment, assignment, and technique, you stand a good chance to increase that win total in the Big 12 next year.
Guys, the Pac-12 and my hair saying goodbye. I need an NLI deal with some people we know who had a restoration.
Hey, you could call his name. Coach Prime ain't shy about it. He'll post on his Instagram that he goes and they move it from the back to the front. Man, it works well for him. I
can't find it on my pillow. I don't know where it's going. It's going somewhere. Let's reverse the order here. Neely, I want to come back to you. You Sure. came from covering, Jackson State and the SWAC, and that was a whole different football environment. How would you rate your road games, different environments in the Pac-12 and otherwise? How would you rate the culture, the environment, the operations? What stood out to you this year?
Well, I'll tell you this. Kudos to the SWAC and HBCU culture on game day. There is nothing like it anywhere in the world. There's no duplicating and replicating it, no copy and pasting. It is what it is. The culture is the culture. I would say, though, that the road games to Oregon and Utah just show you organizationally what programmatic things can be done, marketing and branding and fan engagement. And I would encourage ADs across the country, man, if you got an off week, take a trip to Oregon, take a trip to Utah with your staff, because what they do for fan engagement and keeping that crowd loud and in your face from kickoff to the final whistle is just unbelievable. Oregon will have their sections color coordinated to make a green and yellow checkerboard throughout the stadium. We have a game and ask for a whiteout, and you get a few people to do it, but somebody's going to wear black or red and do their own thing. Man, they don't play that. Like, they don't resell their tickets. They are loud, they're engaged, and it's all done, structurally. Like, it's encouraged from the announcing staff up there in the booth with the Jumbotron. So, man, hats off to what they do with Oregon and Utah. I thought those were two environments that really kind of mirror that fan engagement on the HBCU level.
Well, I want to jump back into the game. I know the season is over, but there's one question I did want to ask Coach Carl Reed. Carl, the way Utah ran the ball and ran out the last 6 to 7 minutes of that game, to be successful in college football, we know about all the eye candy and all the high-level passing, but to be able to run the ball like that and kill, your 6-minute offense, do you have to have that as a team if you want to be at a championship level?
If you're going to play championship football, you have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to close games out their way. You saw what the University of Michigan did to Ohio State last weekend as well. Being able to line up in 12 personnel or 21 personnel, turn around and hand the ball off to the tailback, to eat those drives, to be able to control leads, that's necessary for you to be able to win at the major college level.
Oh, I love when my coach talks that coach stuff about those personnel groups where you count the number of tight ends and the number of running backs out there. I love it. Y'all go do your homework. And Coach Carl Reed, you are exactly right. Tyler, when you look at the time of possession, 40 minutes to 20 minutes, Utah had the ball 40 minutes of a 60-minute game. They absolutely controlled the clock, because when you had to stop them on third down, they would get a first down running the ball, and the process starts all the way over. And it just eliminates and decreases the number of opportunities you have with the ball. I know Shador Sanders wasn't out there, but it reminded me of when people used to play Peyton Manning back in the day or Tom Brady back in the day. The only way you beat them is keep them on the sideline. And how do you keep them on the sideline? You run the ball and milk the clock. Coach Prime will tell you, in as much as this has to be an offseason where we get an offensive line to protect our generational quarterback, he will tell you that 1A and 1B is also an offensive line that can run block, because we're going to have to be able to run the ball if we're going to compete and win in the Big 12.
Man. And it's also, in addition to it just being schematically sound to play that way, it is also physically, emotionally, and psychologically damaging to the team that you're doing it to. When you can just turn around and hand the ball off and just say, my guy's going to be a little tougher than your guys, and you can't do anything about it.
I was listening to that game on the radio, guys, and Colorado was right there. I was like, all right, 6 minutes to go. They're going to get the ball back. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. They're not going to get the ball back. Oh, my God. That was just as a fan, it just like sucked the air right out of the room. But hats off to you.
Being there on the sideline, guys, I think Coach Reed is spot on, man. You could see the defense out there stopping them on first down, stopping them on second, but then giving up that big run on third leads to giving up a big run on first because you're gassed, you're emotionally out of it, you've given it all you got, and you still can't damn stop them. We knew going into that game, talking to Charles Kelly, defense coordinator, got to stop the run, got to stop the run. And again, hats off. There were times throughout that game, had they not stopped the run or held them in the red zone, we wouldn't be here talking about how close the game was. But when it comes to depth, when it comes to strength and just getting nasty when it's time to get nasty, the upper hand went to their offensive line and not our defensive line.
All right, let's talk about the elements of the game that everyone can get involved with, offer their opinion, be involved in the conversation, even when you don't know personnel, like this guy right here. The transactional nature of football. Coach Carl Reed, tight ends coach, has already resigned. There may be some more changes. How normal is turnover on a college staff year to year? Does that vary based upon your success, or is that a non-factor in the equation?
It's as normal as you eating a slice of turkey at Thanksgiving dinner.
I didn't have any this year, believe it or not. The first year ever. My brother didn't make any turkey. I don't know what was going on, but that's neither here nor there.
So you're going to have staff changes every year, and especially when you don't meet expectations as a team, you have to look at how to adjust, how to make some moves. Some guys fit, some guys don't. I don't know all the circumstances behind why the decision was made involving Coach Brewster and why he chose to resign himself. But at the end of the day, it's very common. All coaches know that they have to be prepared to replace anybody on the staff at any moment. Other opportunities come, desires change. It's just all part of the game.
Absolutely. And just because a coach moves doesn't mean it's a negative situation. As Carl indicated, sometimes other opportunities open up in different parts of the country to get you closer back to home, maybe even paying you a little more money. So coaches are afforded that opportunity to make those decisions personally. I will say this about Coach Prime, being with him at Jackson State, covering that team for 3 seasons, there wasn't a season that he didn't make a change. And 2 of those seasons, he went undefeated in conference and would still make a change in one of the coordinators or one of the position groups. So you can just rest assured that if he was making changes going undefeated, he's surely going to make changes only winning 4 games. I think you can look for soon to drop that other shoe where there's going to be a change in offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator. It appears that Sean Lewis will be moving on. And you can just expect other changes as well, even if they're in-house, where people don't necessarily move out, the deck gets shuffled and you realign somebody for a better skill set, which was done at Jackson State. You saw Coach Pollock, for instance, go from OC to receiver coach and just working on skill sets. Then when Brett Bartolone was brought in from that Leach coaching tree, Coach Pollock went to tight ends and T.C. Taylor was offensive coordinator. Now he's head coach at Jackson State. So that carousel, like you said, Coach Reed, is about as common as turkey on Thanksgiving, or should I say mac and cheese, because I'm going to eat mac and cheese on Thanksgiving.
That I did not miss this year at all. Neely, I always ask you questions, and you are always 100. You have spent more time around Deion Sanders than anybody I know personally. I just know him a little bit. I know he can be very particular on certain things, and of course, you can't be as great and as culturally relevant as he's been since 1985 by just being a lackadaisical person. Is he any more taxing than your average college coach to be around, to work under? Can it be a stressful thing, or is it pretty, how would you rate it just from your observation deck?
I think it could be stressful for people who quote unquote believe the hype versus don't believe the hype. Meaning that people see this persona of Deion Sanders that's presented through that Coach Prime kind of branding of the prime time era when he was playing ball. And they think that, oh, man, his Instagram post and Twitter feed, that's just him putting on. Well, they don't understand he ain't faking. His standard is high, and it is non-negotiable. And when you start working with him and you're not used to that, you realize real quick that, okay, this is a guy who doesn't watch the clock, or watch the sun. He's here to get the job done, and he expects other people working for him as well. So the standard is the standard with him. And you will see people over the course of his coaching career who kind of wake up one morning and realize, I think I want to spend a little less time doing this or that. And this might not be the organization for me, because what's not going to adjust is his standard down to your standards. You're going to have to adjust up. He is meticulous. He is attention to detail. He is very particular the closer it gets to game day. And he wants production on offense and defense. And those kind of things don't necessarily fit everybody. When you're building an organization, one of the worst things you can do is try to blend high achievers with low achievers, hard-working people with lazy people. It just doesn't work out. And again, Tyler, I can't say enough to you and Coach Carl Reed. Carl Reed knows him just as well as I do. That standard ain't negotiating down with Deion Sanders. It's going to negotiate up. And so you best believe that with this being the first time in his coaching career, whether it's Trinity High School or the Truth League that he created in Texas or Jackson State, this is the first time this man has had a losing record at anything. Believe he ain't standing for that.
Carl, you've been around them as well. Is Neely spitting straight facts on that?
Yeah, he's spitting straight facts, and it's also a little deeper than that when you look across the country. And it's not just Coach Prime. Anybody who's in that seat as a head football coach at the Power 5 level, people got to get on their level, because number one, it ain't too many jobs in the country that pay you like that, even when you're an assistant coach. So when guys decide to get in the coaching profession, it's early days and it's late nights. It's a lot of time away from your family. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of detailed work. It's not a lot of wasted time. A lot of people have jobs and you can work for 1 hour but be on the clock for 8. You can put 90 minutes of work in a 12-hour day. But in that profession, when you up there for 18 hours, you working 18 hours. And everybody's not built for that. It's not something that a lot of people stay in. Some guys will look for lesser things. But I'll tell you what, even if you're an assistant coach, it ain't many jobs you can go on LinkedIn and Indeed and apply for that's going to pay you between $300,000 and $800,000 a year. So if you have a skill set to do it, you better learn how to appreciate it.
You're damn right on that, Carl. Let me say this to you. A lot of people get it twisted and think college football has an off season. It does not. You're looking like right now with us having that last game in Utah, this is probably about a week in December that you can go home and do some things, but then you're rolling into high school and then transfer portal and then getting on the road recruiting. And you got about another week, maybe late January, early February, that you can go home and spend some time with family, that kind of thing. But college football now is, no matter if you finish your last game under 500, let alone go all the way through bowl games, college football is an 11-month season out of the year now, and it is 18-hour days throughout the year. And that's not including getting on the road, going out there recruiting in the downtime. So you have to have guys who can appreciate the drive and have the tenacity to do those kind of hours, because it's a non-negotiable if you're going to compete and win.
All right, the transfer portal, the recruiting aspect has not hit, the fire level yet. It's slowly starting to pick up steam here, but we have seen some decommitments, people who had committed to the University of Colorado. It's interesting, guys. When I was driving in this morning here in Atlanta, I was listening to sports radio, and they were talking about how Carson Beck, who's the Georgia quarterback, used to be a commit in Alabama, and Jake Fromm, who used to be the Georgia quarterback back in the day, was once an Alabama commitment. So, these things at the highest level of college football, kids are going to go back and forth, commit, decommit, that's pretty normal. But you've got to feed this Coach Prime news cycle, and Neely, that's kind of taken the big headline so far, the decommitments the last couple of days.
Yeah, it is what it is. You can't have one side of the coin heads and not have the other side tails. People are going to discuss this program ad nauseum when people leave, come, or whatever. And it is bigger news when we lose, and it is bigger news when someone decommits. It doesn't matter that decommitments are happening 50 times a day throughout the day at every institution in America. When it happens to Deion Sanders, people paint it as a bigger picture or a bigger negative. And I will tell you this, Coach Reed, before we start hitting the portal with guys coming in, there's going to be a significant number of guys doing those Instagram posts that are going out. And it's going to make big news because here's another person leaving Deion Sanders. Something must be wrong. When Coach Brew resigned, you saw all the clickbait. Excellent recruiter, tight end coach. Coach Brew leaves Coach Prime. What's going on inside? It doesn't factor in the details of reality that this is a common thing in college football in America. It's a sensationalized story because it's happening with Coach Prime. So here's what you can expect. There's going to be some more decommits. There's going to be players currently at Colorado hitting the portal. And then in the days after that, you're going to see a lot of announcement of guys hitting the portal coming into Colorado. And they may not get to splash in attention as the exit because people only report on planes that crash. They don't report on planes that land.
That's a good one, Neely. Good job.
That's
man.
A bar right there. That's going to be my OG statement for the week, Neely. That's a bar.
Carl, what is your anticipation once the transactional activity of college football really picks up full steam? What do you think the train station at Colorado is going to look like?
It's going to get a lot of new luggage. Coach Prime has a clear plan and clear vision for the players he needs to sign and the positions that those players need to be at. And his plan has been crystal clear. He has not wavered from that when they were 3-1 or when they were 4-8. The plan has not changed, and they're in the mix for some guys. Is going to upgrade the level of talent for sure.
What do you guys think when someone's in the portal and the average person who may have an agenda or not looks and says, okay, that's a 4-8 team, and all 4-8 teams are the same. If you're an impact player that's looking to make a move, how do you think those guys view the state of the program at Colorado?
Well, the impact players, they feel like they're going to be impactful no matter what school they go to. So I think for those guys, it's less and less about the school and more about what situation is going to get them ready for the National Football League, which is what those guys are chasing. And those are the kind of guys that you need to win at a high level at the Division I level.
Yeah, let me speak on that, Carl, because I believe you're spot on again, my brother. If you are looking to play on Sundays and you have 1, maybe 2 years left, and let's start with the offensive line, what better situation to come to than to protect Shador Sanders and to create a much improved run game in Colorado? What is going to inevitably happen should you do that is you're going to get the lion's share of the credit for the change. You know all the games are going to be on TV going into the Big 12. You know all eyes in America are going to be on the offensive line and if Shador Sanders is standing straight up or not. You couldn't ask for a more advantageous situation if you're looking for a college home. And that's not counting NIL, college game day, big noon kickoff, the big boys, and all those things that come with Colorado football. You're just talking about the opportunity of eyeballs and GMs and scouts who are at every practice at Colorado to go play on Sundays. And it's the same thing if you're on the trenches. Here's a team that's been giving up nearly 500 yards a game on defense, even if the games were close. Well, if you're a defensive lineman or a linebacker, or if you want to play in the secondary and you got Travis on one side, Kamani on the other, what a great opportunity for a young man to come in for 1 year, 2 years to show and prove to the world he can play on Sundays. I don't think any college program in America can offer you a better 1 or 2 and done situation than Colorado can right now.
All right, let's look at the position groups. Carl, I'm going to start with you. Let's look at the defensive side. When you look at the defensive secondary, the corners and the safeties, then you look at the linebackers, and then you look at that defensive line. With those 3 groups there, how would you rate them as far as what really needs some help and what might be sustainable, or how would you look at those groups on the defensive side?
The secondary needs the least amount of help in terms of what's on campus right now. And on the defensive line, you need game changers at the pass rushing positions, and you need big interior defensive tackles who can control the middle of the defense. Linebackers on the inside and outside, you need guys who can tackle from side to side and who can digest Charles Kelly's defense and help facilitate running it throughout the whole defensive unit from a communication standpoint. It's not just all a physical game, it's also a mental game. So those will be the things that I would be looking for to show up the defense first right away.
You know, Tyler, when you do shows like this, sometimes you have nothing to add, but you're forced because of the format to add something. So let me just add an amen to what my brother just said. It is literally that simple. I'll tell you one thing about our D-line. I spend a lot of time with these players, and I love interviewing them. But there's not a guy on the D-line that I'm scared of, Tyler. And what we need on our D-line is we need somebody down in the trenches that I don't even want to talk to them. We need somebody when they step off the bus, the other people say, oh, we got to improve the physicality and the nastiness on defensive line. And I think Carl exactly right with the linebacker, whereas we do have depth, we've got to increase that kind of football IQ and that communication level because somebody has to be out there and know this defense just as well as Charles Kelly and get people in the right places. That's been a lot of times Shador Sanders back there at safety doing that, but you needed that one level down or one level up from the line of scrimmage as well. So I think you're spot on with that assessment. And I think that's exactly what we're looking for in the portal.
All right. I have the recruiting solution here. All right. You put a tray of mac and cheese in the middle. You put Neely on one side, and you put a prospective defensive lineman on the other. If Neely walks away, that's your dog right there.
Hey, I tell you what, if Chef adds some lobsters to that mac and cheese, that D lineman ain't walking away. I'm getting that lobster back.
Carl, you brought up a name that we talk about a lot, Charles Kelly, defensive coordinator. How much of the players that might be interested, the players might land, how much of their knowledge of, or at least the base knowledge of what he's doing, his system, familiarity with that, does that play a role at all? Does a player say, hey, I'm kind of familiar with that scheme, that would be good, or hey, I don't, we did something totally different, or is that not a factor at all?
Well, the scheme is so multiple. Any player that comes in has done at least something that the scheme is going to require you to do, but they might not have had to do the whole kit and caboodle the way that he'll change those things and move it out. And it just goes back to that Alabama defensive philosophy, in which really, I can't say Alabama, it originated with Bill Belichick. They believe you have to be multiple. They believe you have to be able to jump into any defensive front or coverage to stop a team, depending on who you're playing. So you have to know every element of the 30 and the 40, and that's not always easy for guys to pick up.
Yeah, Charles Kelly, man, the past 5 seasons, 6 seasons now that this one is complete, has coached in 2 national championships and gotten his defenses, to that level to perform. One of the nuances about it, I think Carl Reed is right. You're going to have done some form and fashion of it. Probably just have to learn some different terminology than where you're from. But one of the things about a Charles Kelly and the complexity of that defense is that it certainly works better for people who've been in it for multiple seasons. Now, the drawback to that in this new era of college football, you may not be coaching the same kid 3 or 4 years anymore. So some of the defense has to be scaled back. And you saw that later in the season, where instead of putting the whole wagon out there for a game, let's just look at these 5 formations here that we're doing best. And let's perfect what we're doing well versus struggling to do some things we can't. So I think Charles Kelly is going to make some adjustments over this offseason, particularly based on the talent level of what comes in and what remains, so that those current players like a Shador Sanders can help teach it to others, because he runs a complex defense. But it's one of those things that when you got it, but you got to get it or you ain't got it.
Let's see. You got it if you got it, but you got to get it if you ain't got it. Got it. All right, one last question on defense here. This is my dumb question of the week. There were so many instances where, there was a collision in the backfield, and you were like, all right, Colorado tackles the running back for a loss, and the next thing you know, he gets the first down. How much of this is, man, you got to find some guys that can just good open field tackling, or is that making it too simple?
It's a combination of the two. You need guys who are technically sound tackling, but you also need guys that want to tackle. It's a want-to thing more than it is a technique thing also, and it's a toughness that goes into it and a physicality that comes from the weight room. One of my high school teammates, Kerry Davis, started at fullback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and when we were in high school and he would run over guys, he used to tell them, don't hate me, hate the weights. You know what I mean? and so it comes down to that type of mentality, when you play in the game. Because football, you have to play with an edge on you, man, and you have to play with a certain mentality that you'll fulfill your assignment no matter the cost.
I love that. I love it. One of the things I heard Charles Kelly say is that it's never too late in the season to work on fundamentals. So I think, Tolly, when you take that quote and you talk about don't hate me, hate the weights, Coach Reed, that you also just have to, throughout the season, I don't care if it's 2 games left or 1 game left, you got to work on tackling. And I know that a lot of times in college football, the pads come off at some point in the week because you want to get ready for the game and not be so banged up in practice. But you also have to carve out some time during that week for just the fundamentals, blocking drills, tackling drills, because the team that blocks the best and tackles the best and turns the ball over the least, that's who's going to win in college football. And you have to work on stripping the ball and not being stripped, making blocks and reads, and tackling throughout the season.
All right, let's go to the offensive side of the ball. Carl, all right, we got, our offensive line. We already know what the answer is going to be there. Quarterback, you're set. Now, that is the one thing you don't have to worry about, barring, any injury. Shador Sanders is a generational talent there. You got your wide receivers and your tight ends, and you have your running backs there. How would you rank the offensive side of the ball by position group based on what they need and what they might be okay with?
I think that you can get by with every position that you have except the offensive line. Everything offensively needs to go towards getting offensive linemen, big bodies, and a couple of tight end type bodies. You have great receiver play. You have enough backs. You have the best quarterback in the game in that class. So what you have to do is completely rebuild the offensive line. Big guys on the interior, guys that are longer and can block edge rushers on the perimeter, but that can also come off and play against the run with great leverage. And you have to address the offensive line. If you get that figured out with not only great players in the starting 5, but also be able to go 3 to 5 deep backups in case somebody goes down, now you're going to be talking about completely changing the trajectory of your football team.
Man, you have just made me have a Merry Christmas. You just put all the right gifts under the tree. But if I could add a stocking stuffer to that wish list, to that Christmas list, we need a blocking tight end. We got a lot of play out of Mikey Harrison, as he's called. He's a walk-on wide receiver, converted to tight end. Coach Brew was able to coach him up. He became a safety blanket for Shador, some check downs, and got a lot of touchdowns this season. But as it related, when you talk about that jumbo package Carl Reed early in the personnel group, if we're going to really assist that offensive line that you so eloquently spotted the need on, we need to add in a tight end that is not so much a wide receiver body, but closer to a big boy offensive line body that can get downfield 20 yards and got some hands on them. But blocking tight end is what we need.
All right, Dylan Edwards, if you get the line, what can you do with him? He's not the biggest guy in the world. He sure is fast. With the right line, what do you think the best way would be to utilize Edwards?
Well, I think that they have a plethora of backs that you can use, not only just him, but McCaskill will be back next year as well, healthy and ready to go. So I think from an offensive standpoint, when you analyze the running backs, you run inside and outside zone, you got the power O series, and then you had a wide perimeter runs in the swing routes, and you just take the backs that fit those skill sets and you put them in the packages that work best for them. And as long as you have the guys who can block those packages, you have the backs on the roster that can do the things they need to do.
I agree with that, Carl. And I think it's specifically to that question, Tolly, as it relates to a Dylan Edwards, it really doesn't matter for me about that offensive line. As much as it does, I just said a second ago, a tight end that can get out and initiate a block. Because if Dylan Edwards can make one man miss, or if you can help him out there on the edges with a blocking tight end, he's going to have a game like he had at TCU week after week. I think that what happened under this offense early on, there was an effort to just have running back by committee and just run guys through the A or B gap, and that ain't Dylan's game. If you got to get him out of space, even if receiver, line him up a slot, you saw what he can do this past week in Utah returning kicks or punts. He is a dynamic athlete with speed, but you don't want to just constantly run him up the middle. So I'm not looking as much to the offensive line play for Dylan Edwards as I am for the offensive line as it relates to Alto McCaskill coming back, Hankerson and Savion Wilkerson also competing. I think we're deep and talented at the running back room, and if we have an offensive line for those guys, I think they can lead the Big 12 and be Big 12 first team in running, man, because they have that talent. They've just been lacking the help, up front.
All right, Shador Sanders makes it a habit to improve on something each season. We've seen his development from the time he set foot on campus at Jackson State to his first full season at Colorado. What is the thing you guys think Shador will work on to improve this offseason heading into his senior season?
I think that number one, getting a new offensive coordinator, I think that he'll be learning a new system from a terminology standpoint and kind of figuring out how they mess with that. And number two, I would say protecting himself. You know, he took a beating this year, not only from the sacks, but he was scrambling around a lot because of the pressure. I think he has to really study on how to protect himself so he can stay healthy, because you can't make the club in the tub. You got to be able to be out there with your teammates at all times, and you got to be in good health. So throwing the ball away a little bit and just kind of managing himself, you know, to avoid injury.
Now, Tyler, he was not talking about the nightclub. He's talking about the football club.
Because I was thinking, I hope to be in the tub after the club. That's what I thought. Anyway.
So, Tyler, here's what I think Shador Sanders will be focused on and working on, akin to what Coach Carl Reed has said, and that's control the controllables. I may not be able to improve my offensive line. I may not have a lot of say in who comes here through the portal, who stays, but I can take less risks. There's sometimes you just got to throw the ball out of bounds and not drop back 20 yards and running around and give up a sack, taking your team out of field goal range. I think he needs to clean up those little nuances of the game, keep the things he's steady and improve on those. But I think you're going to see a Shador Sanders that has owned, I need to get the ball out a little quicker, has owned, you know, sometimes I'm waiting on a guy to come out of that route and giving him the extra time by running around. When you look at statistically what's the best way to do it from an analytical standpoint, sometimes you just go on to the next play and throw the ball away. Here's what I will say to the general manager and the scouts that are out there about Shador Sanders when you're looking at drafting him next year. This is a guy who has had success at Jackson State 2 years, success even leading the nation with being sacked 52 times in the Power 5 at Colorado. Jackson State, he set the single season touchdown record, set a yardage record. Colorado, he set a yardage record single season, too short of touchdowns, but he didn't play that last game. And more importantly, when you look at the NFL and the transitionary coaches, this brother has had a different offense coordinator every year of his college career and still does the damn thing. You can't find too many people in the NFL who don't have drop-offs when they switch coordinators. He has switched college coordinators every year of his college ball, and the numbers go up.
The Falcons are going to be ready, man. We are just – we got a tight end down here that we're not using. You know, they got the running game, you know, together. They're just waiting on Shador. We'll scuffle around for another year. We'll keep the seat warm here in Atlanta.
It'd be a beautiful thing to have a Sanders back in Atlanta.
I will not complain. I will not complain. I know Coach Carl Reed is on the time limit here. Before we go, Coach, special teams, we don't want to ignore those guys. What would you say the state of special teams is for Colorado? Are they okay? Do they need to improve? What are your thoughts?
Have to improve special teams play. A couple missed assignments. It was a couple personnel issues at times. And then miss a couple of key kicks. Have to improve special teams. Even though I do think we have the right kickers on the roster, there still needs to be some improvements made on the special teams game.
Spot on. Can't get any better than Mark Vassett, who is leading the nation and putting punts inside the 10 and the 5. We know Alejandro Mata don't miss. Jason Feely, the son of Jay Feely, get a little more consistent, kicking out the back of the end zone. But I do think schematically we need to do some things, because whereas we had some success in special teams, we had a couple of near block punts. We had a couple of almost miscues that we got away with. So we got some things to clean up in special teams, because as Coach Prime would tell you, special teams did not play special this year outside of the guys who put their foot on the ball.
All right, Neely, really quick here. Whether it be graduation, eligibility, whatever, biggest loss for this team, who won't be back?
Oh, man, that's a tough one and a good one. So let me go with two, and that is via eligibility being exhausted. I'm going to go offense and defense. Zay Weaver on offense. Receiver came down to fluid, could not participate in the Utah game, was just short of 1,000 yards. Pretty certain you're going to see him at the Senior Bowl and also playing on Sundays. And on defense, give me another young brother who's exhausted eligibility, and Jordan J.D. Dominic, played at Georgia Tech and Arkansas, and then leader on the defense here in Nick Williams' defensive end room. I think those two guys are going to be losses. They can be replaced in the portal, but their leadership and their personalities and their numbers, I think that's going to be a drop-off for Colorado because they're going to be missed, their special players.
Coach Carl, what type of body would you like to see in there? What type of athlete at wide receiver to fill the shoes of Weaver?
I just like to see game changes from a speed standpoint. I love, at the receiver position, I love fast guys. I love guys that when they get their hands on the ball, they can turn a hitch into a 60-yard touchdown. They can turn what looks like a routine catch into a house call. So I just look for great playmakers and the ability to run fast and be consistent in catching the ball.
All right, Coach Carl has 3 minutes. I'm going to squeeze in another one. Neely, we saw some potential with some of the third and fourth receiver, but I just don't know how consistent it was. Do you think those guys are going to continue to get opportunities moving forward here? Or do you need somebody that's just going to do it week in and week out and you can't worry about maybe ifs, ands, and buts?
Here is the ugliness and beautiful part of college football. It is just like the NFL now. My job is to replace you. I am always looking for someone better than you. Having said that, the young guys who got to play in the final two games showed that they put the work in, they studied, they did well on scout team, and when they got their opportunities in real games, they made the most of it. I think some of those guys are going to stick around, but if you look at the situation, I still would do it quickly here with QB2, Ryan Staub that played in that Utah game. Coach Reed, I think his phone is going to ring. I think he showed enough that he can be a QB1 somewhere else. So he's going to have a decision to make. Does he move on and play QB1 at another school or hang here as QB2? Because he showed with an opportunity what he can do.
Talented kid, for sure.
All right, we will leave it right there. I do not want Coach Carl Reed's lawyers and representatives calling me saying that we kept him overtime with 2 minutes to spare before Coach Carl Reed turns back into a pumpkin. We say sayonara. This is the Big Boys on the Pregame Show Network. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.